So the next one is, I'm kind of staying in the tech space for a little bit. The next one is an example of C++. So I've taken a week 4 Canvas quiz on C++, and I'm just going to go ahead and be that terrible cheating student who's just copying and pasting those questions directly into ChatGPT. And so very simple C++ function prototype. We're saying is the following C++ function a prototype, and it's responding yes. But in particular, what I'd like you to notice in this example is that it's doing a really good job at explaining its responses. And so I think for students, this is a worthwhile tool in this space, that you may not have the resources tied in your textbook to know exactly what the content is. And ChatGPT is doing a very good job of breaking some of these C++ programming topics down in a way that might be more digestible to some of our students. So I hate to see something where we just are flat out not wanting our students to use a tool like this, when it can do a great job describing some of the concepts to our students that that they might have questions about. And so this is an interesting one because I think in particular, pass by reference is a pretty sticky subject for some C++ students. And this does a really good job at explaining what that means as well. So, you know, I like to see this as a resource that we're wanting to also explore with our students together, and in a responsible way that doesn't mean them copy and pasting into your Canvas quizzes. But this might also mean that you need to make some modifications to your Canvas quizzes so that they're not so easily beat within 3 minutes. Any questions so far? Okay. Next one I'm going to look at is from biology. And then again, this one I'm using to highlight maybe some of the voice that tends to, you can tend to see a voice that's happening within the responses here. And the other thing I'm wanting to highlight here is that GPT has an API that can be made available in both Google Docs and Google Sheets. So a lot of individuals have been getting timed out from ChatGPT, used to just large-scale demand. It seems like it's constantly not available. But if you integrate the API into Google Docs in this format, which is fairly simple to do, I have not timed out this thing once, and the robustness of the responses is much greater than what you would get in just ChatGPT. So I'm just copying in the first question here, and we can see the response. Some other things to recognize about this, and I will show at the end of this video, is that there are chat or AI text detectors that are out there right now. And some faculty are hoping that this is going to be a solution, being able to just take student responses, put them into an AI detection tool, and find out if what students are producing is coming from an AI. And those things are very unreliable and are easy to be beat. Things like just removing the Oxford comma can take a 85% predicted AI down to 60% AI. So just removing or making small grammatical errors intentionally is enough to beat the AI detection. And we'll see that here in a moment. But just another example of just the robustness of the outputs that you're seeing, and this kind of, it is a somewhat generic voice that comes out. I know that it's maybe difficult to have a student voice coming in something like these biology topics, but I think it's still maybe identifiable and something that if you spend some time with GPT, you might find that you can start to identify the voice on your own. I think maybe there's a question in the chat, but let me double check here.
I'm looking at the chat.
Okay, great. Nope. Okay. So we've taken these biology questions. We've used GPT in the docs extension. And from that, we're able to produce output. Now, here's an AI content detector. And so we're just going to try one of these things out. We'll take some of the output from ChatGPT, and notice this first one, it is a little bit shorter. And this shorter of a response is actually, I think, the reason why this comes out with a response of human text. So this, we were already able to beat it in our first try with that first question, and it could have to do with just the size of the response, like the number of actual words in that response, but also maybe the complexity of the response is what's triggering that. Now, the rest of these, it's going to go ahead and recognize it as being written by AI. And like I was saying before, we could make some simple grammatical errors, remove some Oxford commas from this, and we could probably get this to produce a human response, which your students would just as easily be having access to these AI detection tools as you would do as an instructor. So you should keep that in mind and use these AI content detectors with a grain of salt. There is a message in the chat. So I added the ChatGPT extension to Google Sheets. I want to be clear, what I actually added was the GPT extension to Sheets. And I want to clarify why that's a little bit different than ChatGPT. ChatGPT is a product that is right now very public facing and everyone has access to just by signing up for an account. GPT is the actual language model that's underlying that. And there is a much more, there's far less limitations in the GPT model than there is in that public facing ChatGPT. So ChatGPT has been limited and it will not produce things that are necessarily illegal or ethically immoral. So that brings up a whole lot of censorship issues. But GPT, the model itself, does not have those same limitations. And so, again, if you do go down this road of adding this extension into Google Sheets or into Google Docs, just know that you can you have a lot more of a playground to play around in. And we'll look at some of that at the end here too. This next example, I have a friend who's in a master's program. It's either in counseling or social work. And so this one is having ChatGPT do a full-on essay for us. And I say ChatGPT, but really the GPT model within Google Docs. I had to do some slight tweaking to the way the prompt from the instructor was to get it to this format. And you'll notice there's really only two things that are being asked here. These two questions about what's the difference between cultural competence and cultural humility, and then how might these concepts be relevant to engaging spaces, the integrated health settings. Now the prompt, the instructor prompt actually provided some of this kind of scaffolding, and I've heard scaffolding as being a good way of helping to kind of alleviate some of the AI. And what I'm finding is that while yes, providing scaffolding like this is going to muck up the output from GPT, it is going to still provide you with a good outline of an essay that you could then very slightly make modifications to remove that outline content to have it be acceptable. Now, notice that I asked this thing to provide 5 citations. Now, the first time I did this, I said for 5 citations, and it only gave me 3. And so I had to modify the prompt to be exactly 5 citations, and then it gave me 5 citations. Now, this might blow your mind, like, wow, it's even able to cite sources, but I'm here to break that worry for you, because these are not actual real citations. It is concocting these citations out of thin air. They are not real citations. They may be real authors, they may be real journals, but these are not actual journal article titles from these journals by these authors. And so just doing some quick searching to see if that was the case here. I'm gonna first have GPT finish the request, which is to list the 5 citations used in the essay. I had a timeout, like I reached the maximum amount of content of output, and that's why it stopped right there at the 5 citations used in this essay. But now we'll get those 5 citations, and we can test those 5 citations and find out that these are not actual articles that exist. So checking some citations that your students might be providing might also be a worthwhile endeavor, trying to see whether or not, but I imagine you're all content experts and you're all up on all the current research and all the articles that are presented anyway, so. Okay. Is there more to this one? I think that was it. I think I was just testing that out. The only other thing I'll mention here, just about the GPT add-on for Sheets, is that there is a few different parameters that you can make edits to in terms of the length of the response. So I had to change this from a maximum of 10 paragraphs to 20 paragraphs. And then there's a few different underlying language models that are built in there too. So the variety of the voice that you might end up receiving from AI generated content your students might be worth this part. Last example I want to give here is its ability to decipher acronyms and make reference to local resources. So here's another one. This was from my same friend who took a policy course last semester. And so I didn't know what an SDG was just from the acronym itself. So I'm wondering, is ChatGPT going to be able to decipher what we mean by SDG? And so I look up UN SDG, and there's our 17 goals for the SDGs. And I'm just going to go ahead and break this apart into a couple different prompts. Reviewing the SDGs, randomly choosing 2 of them, discussing how the 2 relate and how they both relate to social work practice, and generates a fairly generic response here, but they did a good job identifying that SDGs is referring to the sustainable development goals, and was able to correctly identify that 6 and 7 are the ones that it's stating in the prompt. Well, the second part of this assignment was asking, find out if there are any efforts being made by your local community to realize the SDGs, and let us know what you find. And so put this in, and we end up with a fairly generic response. Just talking about making reference to their own local community, but not stating where that local community is, not stating what the actual local nonprofits are that are doing this work, clean energy, saying other initiatives being carried out, but not referencing who's carrying out this work. And with a little bit of effort and modifications of prompts, you can get GPT to be much more explicit, doing things like having it reference the specific local location where you were at. If you're trying to make it be more personal, you can add things like speak as the writer, and it will, or add personal experiences from the writer's life, and it will generate its own experiences to include in its output. So here I'm making reference to Sonoma County, and I'm saying provide specific examples of the agencies that are trying to actualize these efforts. So Sonoma County Community Development Commission, that's a real thing. Sonoma County Transportation Authority, that's a real thing. Sonoma County Health Services Department, that's a real thing. Now, I don't know the accuracy of these initiatives that they're actually performing, but it was able to at least grab those things. Okay. Any questions there?